This is StormReel, a podcast about the intersection of people and weather, hosted by storm chasers Jeremy Hamann and me, Gabe Cox.
Welcome to StormReel, the podcast about the intersection of weather and people. I am your host, Jeremy Hamann, joined by my fellow host, Gabe Cox. Hey, Gabe, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome. How are you, man?
Doing great. It is so fun to be back on the podcast, talking about weather with our friends. This is a great day. How are you, man? What are you watching out there these days, weather-wise? We're as of record, we are in the heart of chase season right now, so social media is filled with incredible clips and things like that. But yes. I think you have a clip that you have on the mind right now. Which clip is that?
Yes, and this is not even from Tornado Alley. So we're going across the ocean for this one. And I thought it was fake when I first started watching it. It looked so crystal clear that it seemed like it was a video game. But it's a woman in China, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the province that it's in. She thought she was driving into a dust storm. It is very clearly not a dust storm.
Yeah.
It is a rope tornado.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly. And she 0 meters it. She drives straight into it.
Just intercept.
On the highway. Yeah. Full on intercept. What she thought was a dust storm. So, I mean, I guess you could think it's a very concentrated, swirling dust storm. But no, I just thought it was great. She was fine. It was a very, very weak tornado. Yeah. Nothing happened. It was basically a glorified dust devil. But, yeah, I thought it was pretty humorous that someone could just unknowingly, with as obvious as it is, sitting on the road, just drive straight into the heart of it. So props to her for an awesome intercept. Well done.
Yeah, no joke. And she had her dash cam going and everything. I mean, she's chase ready. Like she totally nailed it. She does. Yeah. She's doing better than some of us do out there. Better
you
than
couldn't
me
ask for better visibility. Yeah. I mean, it was crystal clear.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So well done, woman from China.
Absolutely. Yeah, and she posted it and everything. Just awesome. I love it. Yeah,
she just one-upped everybody. Tornado of the year.
Seriously. Yeah, but we'll post that link in the show notes so you can take a look at that awesome intercept of that really pretty EF0 rope. Perfect intercept. The road was empty, and she just totally nailed it.
Nailed it.
That was awesome. Well, we've got an awesome guest on this week's episode, and we will bring them in now. Ethan Moriarty is a founding member of JuneFirst Severe Weather, whose mission statement is JuneFirst Severe Weather Research is using 21st century media and engineering methods to enhance the understanding of severe weather. Ethan is an alumni of Quinnipiac University School of Engineering, where he received a BS in mechanical engineering. Ethan is also a prolific YouTube creator. His channel, JuneFirst, features videos about a wide range of weather topics, including historic severe weather events, storm chasing, and weather engineering. Welcome to the show, Ethan.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I've been a fan for some time, so it's great to be here.
Man,
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you're here. We've had several encounters roadside where we've run into you and run into you while I've been out on the road solo. And we've got to share some pretty fun moments. I think my favorite is Encino, New Mexico.
That was an awesome day.
That was I think that was the last day of one of your annual trips out from New England. And you hadn't seen a tornado up until that day, I think. And you were kind of bummed. I remember seeing on social media, like, man, I really hope I could see something. I only get a week to do this. And that day we got to see an anticyclonic tornado, which was my first. It was also my first New Mexico tornado. But I remember you being maybe 100 yards up the road and just hearing you guys cheering. It was a super fun moment to share.
Yeah, it's awesome getting to see photogenic tornadoes, particularly in areas that you know that it's not hitting anything or anything like that. It's like the best experience.
Absolutely.
And that Encino Day was just such a strange day to begin with, because it's I remember like wearing a sweatshirt that entire chase because I mean we're at like 6,000 feet of elevation.
Yep.
And it's not something that you're always thinking about nice warm inflow standing in front of a storm. And it's not often that it's like 50 degrees and you're watching tornadoes form. So that was an awesome day and the best way possible to cap off a trip.
Absolutely.
Well, Ethan, I was recently watching your latest YouTube video entitled My Greatest Week of Tornado Chasing. Really, really wonderful compilation of a week of time you had recently in April 2025 of being out in the Southern Plains. Tell us about that week and what it was like, what you saw, and what it was like putting together that video.
Yeah, so kind of leading up to that point, it had been a pretty long off season for me, and I was kind of just, really itching to get out west and kind of just looking for a pattern that, kind of would warrant an extended trip out there. And I kind of just saw a nice zonal flow pattern setting up over the Southern High Plains. And I've seen that look enough times before that I knew there would be, some great days in that higher elevation of Texas into New Mexico. And then the end of that period was a nice trough ejection that looked like it would be, tornado outbreak potential. So warranted the trip out from the East Coast out west. And, it was just pretty much day after day of just dry line plus outflow boundary type days where, a storm would blow up and it was kind of just go here stupid type of targets. And, had a beautiful, the first real chaseable tornado was just in Silverton, Texas, and a nice, beautiful anticyclonic tornado to kick it off, and then eventually spooled up a real potent tornado after that, right kind of on the edge going into the canyon there in that region of Texas, and kind of got in behind the RFD of that one and kind of got to see the whole cut through the storm. And there were definitely people that had better perspectives, but, I was happy enough to get some eyes on it and all that. And, eventually had another nice, beautiful, dusty tornado intercept in the western, panhandle region, kind of near Littlefield, Sudan, Texas. And then to really cap off the trip was kind of a whole dry line setup that had a number of targets. And there was kind of the more guaranteed spot up in Nebraska, and then, kind of a boom or bust type of situation from Kansas all the way down into the Texas Panhandle. And I liked the look of the Kansas stuff and just said, you know what, like if I position smartly here and if I can play my cards right, if things don't look good here, I can still get north. And sure enough, Kansas kind of started deteriorating the wrong way. The cumulus field burned off, and I was like, you know what, time to head north. And had got that awesome supercell in the sandhills of Nebraska that produced that beautiful wedge tornado. Just missed that one, but I got into position for a nice, beautiful rope tornado that was definitely just over the middle of nowhere and had a nice view of it, which can be hard to find in the sandhills. And then a beautiful time-lapsing opportunity. And the outbreak that was supposed to happen at the tail end of that trip didn't pan out, which is maybe for the best given the parameter space at that day and kind of the populations that were kind of under the gun, as you would say, in the warning boxes. So kind of glad to make sure that nobody was, that things didn't pan out and cause any serious death or destruction. But awesome trip all around to kick off the start of this season.
Just incredible.
Yeah. The video is so fun to watch. And you do a great job laying out the story. And that's what you don't, don't see it anywhere in your bio. Maybe I missed it, but you don't consider yourself a storyteller. You're a fantastic storyteller.
Yeah, seriously, dude.
You do a really great job of laying out a narrative and walking people through beginning, middle, and end of a story, whether it's your own or, historic tornadoes that happen. Really do a fantastic job of laying those out. And the YouTube videos are super entertaining. I love your production style too. You've kind of adopted the stop motion style, which is really fun and engaging.
Oh my gosh.
And
I love the illustrations.
It's fantastic. So if people listening haven't subscribed, just pause the podcast right now and go subscribe before you forget about it, because it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I've always been interested in kind of like the creation of videos and stuff like that. And I think it kind of dates back, even like kind of early before my weather interest, like really rooted. I was really into doing like the Lego stop motion, like that type of stuff. And I remember watching like behind the scenes of like Star Wars and stuff like that, and how they would do the stop motions of, for Star Wars. And I kind of got fascinated by that really young, and eventually kind of that's kind of like where the film making side kind of started kicking in, and then it just kind of naturally segued into that. So it's kind of been a muscle that I've very much DIY'd learned over the years, and kind of eventually kind of honed my craft, even though I didn't have any professional background in it. And there's many like kind of influences that I pull from that, and I have so much fun just in the creative process of making videos and stuff like that, and being able to tell stories. And it's definitely something that I'm still learning a lot, and looking to kind of expand and even do more in-depth type stuff in the future, hopefully. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I love just the sheer collection of different types of videos you have, because I feel like some people just kind of we're just going to do chase videos, we're just going to do maybe some history videos, but you have such an awesome eclectic mix, and you do them all super, super well. It's like super impressive. I love your damage analysis videos and like historic tornado videos. It's just like endlessly fascinating to dive into those topics. I really love, I think it's your latest damage analysis video about the Tri-State F5. Just fascinating history. And I love how you use physics and the arithmetic of physics to calculate like almost minutia, like you're looking at a water tower and figuring out, I think you used like Bernoulli's principle in relation to a water tower. It's just awesome. What was the first like motivation to tell the stories of historic tornadoes?
Yeah. So specifically with the damage analysis series, that kind of stemmed back to, my kind of background in mechanical engineering, I guess, differs from a lot of people in the weather space. You have a lot of people coming from, say, a traditional meteorological background, or even more of a broadcast background. And I've kind of taken a different approach to, I've always kind of had the engineering mindset. And so that's ultimately what I went to school for. And with the damage analysis, I wanted to approach things differently, because I always see things like rating debates and stuff like that online. Yeah. And there's obviously a ton of different opinions about the EF scale. And I kind of wanted to get away from necessarily talking about just like, oh, is this a 4? Is this a 5? Why is this that? Like, I find that the EF scale, while it's great for what it, I guess, was designed to do, and sure, it has its limitations, I think we can look beyond the confines of the scale and kind of get a better understanding of what's happening, and using kind of, engineering principles and stuff like that to illustrate how things are either failing, and kind of getting, ballpark estimates just kind of from a different kind of, more analytical engineering approach. And so that's kind of why I've fallen in love with doing the damage analysis series, because it's just a different perspective that we don't get to see often. And I felt like it was an area that could kind of maybe open up people's minds to looking at tornado damage in a different light and not get so fixated on just tornado ratings.
Yeah, I love that. And did you know when you went into engineering, did you know that you wanted to merge your love of weather and engineering, or was that something that just kind of blossomed later on?
Yeah, so going back to, I guess, like high school, when you're kind of like figuring out what you want to do for the rest of your life, I kind of went into two kind of schools of thought. Like I thought like, oh, maybe I could do meteorology or maybe I could do engineering. And why I decided to ultimately go engineering, well, there was more the practical reason of like, I think there were more job opportunities in mechanical engineering. So there was kind of that rational sense, but there was also the other thought too, that I was like, I grew up watching, like the Storm Chasers series on Discovery. And I was like, oh, Tim Samaras, he had a more of an engineering type background. And then if you look even further back than that, you have, a legend like Tim Marshall, that has that blend of engineering and meteorology. And then even further back than that, you look at Ted Fujita. He wasn't a trained meteorologist at first. He got his degree in engineering when he was in Japan. So,
three massive names in the storm world.
Yeah. So the blend of engineering and meteorology is, I think, a lot closer than what a lot of people may realize, especially foundationally. A lot of the same math, a lot of the same physics type stuff. It's just applied in different contexts. So my kind of school of thought when I decided to really commit to engineering was, it's easier to go from an engineering background into weather versus the other way around. And there's plenty of meteorologists. And I thought that given my kind of knack for, mechanical things, I was the stereotypical kid that would take things apart. As we already established, I liked Legos. So it just kind of seemed like the natural way to go, in terms of a career path. And now to kind of blend my love of not only engineering and weather, but also filmmaking now too. It's just kind of like all of my interests spooling together to kind of carve my own little niche in the weather world.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so wonderful. And you do have such a unique voice and perspective. And it's, it's enough to just have that unique perspective, but you have such a knack of then verbalizing and visualizing it all together. That's such a hard task to put all together. Yeah. And you really make it accessible to a general audience, which is really great. Do you have any background in like teaching or anything like that? Because that's just what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, this is a teacher.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that you said that, because that's what I've been trying to do. And I think, honestly, I mean, I never had any like formal tutoring background or teaching background, but I think just with time, I just kind of found my voice through repetition. Like, I bet if you dig deeper back into the catalog, it's definitely a little bit rougher, and I'm probably a little bit more granular. But I mean, I guess I did help a lot of my friends and I, that when we were in engineering school, it was, it's definitely very tough to get through, and you can't really do it on your own. And each of us kind of had our own, I don't want to say specialties, but like, if one person had a good way of, explaining a topic, we would do problem sets and homework together all the time. And we would get up and use the chalkboards in the study rooms to kind of work through problems together. And I think maybe it kind of stemmed from that, like trying to explain the process just to get through engineering school. And then, maybe that's kind of where the muscles started getting flexed a little bit in order to, translate that into, I guess, a more presentation sense in the videos that I do. So it's definitely something that it's probably just been grown through time. And I'll be the first to admit that I talk to myself a lot. So I think that
we all do.
Yeah, exactly.
Chasers, chatting with yourself.
Yeah. So it took me some time to kind of find my, like, I guess, narrative or presentive voice. And I guess it's something that I'm starting to see a lot more like comments under the videos now that kind of reflect that same sentiment. So I think it's just something that I've kind of developed with time over the years, just kind of really flexing that muscle, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. And on the topic of the beginnings of things, one thing we like to ask our guests is their origin story. So you're born and raised in Massachusetts. I'm born and raised in Maine. We're both New England boys, and both developed a love for tornadoes that almost never happen in either one of those states. So I'm curious to know, what is your origin story when it comes to weather?
Yeah, my origin story is one that I've had to explain many a times to different people in my area because, we're not used to tornadoes in the Northeast, in New England. But it's always been something that has been with me, like the whole weather thing. I was very into the Weather Channel and stuff like that from a very young age. I have videos of me when I was a toddler where I had a United States placemat that I used to eat my food on or whatever, but then I like hung it up on the wall, and then I made little weather icons to be my own little weather presenter when I was like 4 years old. And so it definitely had been something that was with me. But I wouldn't say that I would have been so passionate about it to dedicate a career towards it if it weren't for JuneFirst 2011, where we had an EF3 tornado rip through western Massachusetts. Like if you go back and look at some of like the radar presentations, like it's as classic of a supercell presentation as you can possibly get. Yeah. And then you zoom out and it's over Massachusetts. Like it makes zero sense. And this thing, I mean, this is incredibly rare. Like people to just drive the point home, like this is not normal for Massachusetts or New England. It was on the ground for almost 40 miles. Yes.
70 minutes on the ground, which is rare even in Tornado Alley to have a tornado last that long. But to have one in Massachusetts on the ground that long is insanely rare.
Yeah. And when I saw it, so I was being driven to my Little League baseball game. I was still too young to drive. And my mom and I were driving south through West Springfield. And we're on Route 5, and that parallels the Connecticut River. So right between West Springfield and downtown Springfield. And I watched the tornado cross from West Springfield into downtown Springfield. So, I mean, it's still one of the most vivid memories that I have to this day. Like I can still like pick individual, pieces of debris out. Wow. And watching the water being pulled up from the river. And, having a tornado like that happen in your neck of the woods, a tornado that breaks every single, kind of myth that you hear throughout time, like a tornado crossing a river, a tornado going over mountains, a tornado happening outside of Tornado Alley, a tornado going basically through skyscrapers in downtown Springfield. And just to witness that, and unfortunately, there were 2 fatalities in West Springfield proper. There were 3 overall. And one of which was my cousin's classmate's mother, who passed shielding her daughter in a bathtub as the house came down on top of them. And it was just like, it destroyed the Merrick section of West Springfield, which is the southern end of town. And, you can still see areas all these years later out further east where it's much more wooded. There's still a scar that you can see from space when it was at peak strength. Thankfully, it wasn't really hitting, super populated areas. It was in the Brimfield State Forest, but it was a half-mile wide, just completely
crazy.
It's just crazy for this to happen in, Western Massachusetts. So that just absolutely hook, line, and sinkered me. The fascination just really completely took root from there.
Yeah, wow. And that makes sense. I mean, you experiencing something historic like that, I think there's only one of 2 paths. There's either a deep fascination with it or a deep fear.
For sure.
Or sometimes it's both. The fear drives the fascination. We've talked to a lot of storm chasers who started out fearing tornadoes, but yeah, to experience something like that, truly historic. I mean, that'll be something that's remembered for a long time to come. It's a historical tornado in Massachusetts. What a crazy start to the fascination.
Yeah, and I think it's still technically to this day the most intense tornado. Like, I guess to go back to ratings and stuff. I mean, the tornado that I actually saw the other day in Texas is probably stronger, but it just didn't hit anything. But on paper, it's still the strongest tornado I've seen, and that's 14 years ago now. So
yeah, that says something about it.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's amazing. Hey, dear listener, storm chasing and podcasting both cost money. And now that Gabe and I are back making podcasts regularly, we have a new way that you can support our show. If you look in the show notes, you'll see a link to be able to subscribe to our podcast. This will cost you $5 a month, and you will be rewarded with early access to our podcasts. You'll get each episode 2 days early as a $5 a month subscriber, and we will read your name on the podcast. This support means the world to us. We take our time out of our regular lives to make these episodes, and so just a little extra support would really, really mean the world to us. Thank you so much for listening and considering subscribing. Do you recall like kind of the living, amidst the aftermath of the storm damage and kind of what the community was like and what it took to put things back together? Yeah.
So, kind of living in the community, downtown Springfield took a massive hit, and it was really interesting to see kind of like what happened after the fact. A lot of that area in downtown Springfield, like, ultimately didn't fully recover. And what ended up happening was Massachusetts legalized casinos in a couple of years after that, and they MGM ended up buying out a huge chunk of that damaged part of Springfield and ultimately built a casino there. So in that sense, I guess, you kind of were able to turn a good leaf there, but it definitely took some time. There's a particular town just west of Springfield, or just east of Springfield, Munson, that was probably the hardest hit community. So not the biggest town, and the tornado rolled over the mountain and like dove into this valley and just completely shredded through it. And took years definitely for that little area to really kind of bounce back. And like I said, there's still a visual scar through the Brimfield State Forest where if you drive through any of the roads that cut through the path, you can see rolling hills of just shrubbery. Like the trees haven't bounced back yet. But there was definitely a big sense in my direct town of West Springfield of resiliency. I remember going to my cousin's high school graduation after that. And I think the mayor spoke for like an hour. Like it was the next weekend. Like it was like immediately following the tornado. And I think the mayor spoke for like an hour about like kind of like the community coming together. And that's something that's kind of stuck out in my mind. And yeah, it's definitely interesting to kind of have that experience firsthand. Like granted, I'm blessed. My house wasn't hit or anything like that. But to have classmates that like lost their homes was definitely interesting. They had a shelter at the middle school for almost a year after that tornado. So that type of stuff, I guess, really kind of sticks with you and really kind of drove that idea in my head to really, kind of dedicate my life to not only like understanding storms, but also, kind of doing my part to, educate people about it, storm safety, and do what I can in my capacity to kind of spread the word, because as I said, that tornado broke a lot of tornado myths, if you will, and it can happen to anyone if the right conditions are there. So that type of messaging is so important in my opinion. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, those tornado myths, they're so persistent and they're so universal almost. And folks who, it's so interesting in like to hear what, you know, certain like myths people have in their minds about severe storms. And it feels like it's geographically specific and maybe like specific to certain communities. But
and my daughter came home with one from her teacher just last week or 2 weeks ago. And one I hadn't heard before, and one that if you dove into it, you would dismiss it immediately. But she said like, oh yeah, we don't have to worry about tornadoes here in Georgetown because of the fault line. I was like,
wow,
well, first of all, there's no fault line here. Secondly, that's not true.
I love that one. There's like a force field emanating from the fault line. That's great. That's great. I love it.
Wow.
I was very proud of my daughter. She knew immediately it was not true. And she said, I didn't say anything. I just sat there quietly and said, It's like, good for you. There are some things not worth arguing. Yeah.
Do you know who my dad is?
That's wild. Hearing that story, Ethan, just thanks for sharing that. I mean, what an incredible first interaction with
crazy
tornadoes and super severe weather in that way. And I'm just always reminded, especially as you're telling me about kind of the after effects and sort of the reaction of the community and, you know, other forces coming in, rebuilding in certain places and not others. And I was really impacted. You made mention in the Tri-State F5 damage analysis video of kind of like the national impacts of like building codes and things like that changing with that storm and you know, like basements being recommended to be built in homes in the areas where tornadoes occur frequently and to update building codes. I'm just fascinated with the kind of downstream effects of severe weather events you know, in communities like that. Was there anything in your area that you saw in terms of, you know, building changes or anything like that?
I don't think there was anything that was like too oriented towards tornadoes, specifically in my area after that event. I think people probably definitely started taking warnings and stuff more seriously after that, because there's always, you know, kind of the narrative that it's like, oh, they all like another warning, you know, kind of the cry wolf type of thing that exists. It's Massachusetts. Nothing happens here. Right. I know for like my family personally, like they definitely started taking things much more seriously after that. But, you know, kind of the downstream effects, that's kind of, there's a number of events that we can look back to where things really start to kind of pivot in terms of like building codes and stuff like that. I mean, Hurricane Andrew being one of the biggest examples in my mind in terms of on a national scale of people realizing the vulnerability that some areas really can have. And I'm thankful in some ways that, you know, I think we're through, you know, kind of social media, granted it has its pros and cons, but I think we're starting to see a lot more awareness amongst the general population of kind of the vulnerabilities. And I think the big thing nowadays that I think is probably the most important message to really get across in terms of probably what is the most lethal in tornadoes are mobile homes. That's a particularly vulnerable structure. I mean, obviously we as weather aficionados and stuff like that, that's something that we all know, but it's that's probably the area that can see the biggest area of improvement, in the area that I would like to see kind of much more messaging directed towards kind of in the future. You know, just kind of some of the stats that I can think of off the top of my head. The Beauregard EF4 in Alabama in 2019, I believe. I believe over 90% of the fatalities in that tornado were attributed to mobile homes. Rolling Fork in Mississippi in 2020 S3E3. I believe over 70% of the fatalities in that tornado were attributed to mobile homes. So it's those types of structures that I think probably warrant the most messaging nowadays, in order to be like, hey, this is not a suitable. It doesn't need to be an EF4 to have that type of impact. We can see them flipped in, EF1s and 2s if they're not, anchored properly. So that's probably a message that I think is probably the most important in this day and age that still needs, constant communication.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We get a lot of comments on, especially our Hurricane Michael video, of international comments of people picking apart American building codes, because it's a video of a house getting ripped apart piece by piece. Curious from an engineer perspective, what your thoughts are on that, like going to the opposite end of the spectrum. Is there a damage proof house? And at what point, like there's going to be a fail point at some point. You're talking a category 5 or an EF5 tornado. Like at some point the building codes don't matter.
For sure. Yeah. I think Hurricane Michael is a great example of that because, after Andrew, that was the big wake-up call for the state of Florida in order to really bolster their housing codes. And, they have some of the strictest in the country, particularly for their coastal areas, even inland too, because given the impacts of Andrew as far inland as it was. But yeah, Hurricane Michael, I mean, it's a category 5. At that point, what can you do? I mean, that's just kind of a numbers game at that point that you just unfortunately drew the short straw. But there are methods that I think outside of even places like Florida's obviously the exception in terms of, having really great building codes, but there are areas along the Gulf Coast that are still particularly vulnerable. Areas that I know you've seen, Gabe, in like Louisiana, like places like that, where there's still quite a lot of work to be done. Fortified is, I would say, like that type of program is like what is probably the best that can be done in terms of construction standards to really bolster your house and give it the best opportunity at some chance of survival in, say your more typical storm, even some of the stronger ones.
And then when it comes to tornadoes, I mean, they'll say it on air. You either have to be below ground or away to survive tornadoes. When you're talking about an EF5, there's nothing you can do. Like we don't have a structure. There are storm shelters, above ground storm shelters that maybe can survive that. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on those too.
Yeah, there definitely are some above ground structures, storm specific shelters that can withstand that type of intense tornado. Even then, though, it's still not a 100% guarantee. In-ground, below-ground shelters are the best. Like, that is the most bulletproof option in terms of sheltering. Like, say, if you're in a personal home, for that matter. I think when it comes to, like, if you're looking at days that have, the potential for long-tracked violent tornadoes, and you, say, live in, like, a mobile home park. Granted, it's a lot easier said than done, depending on means and what you have for access. But even going to a place like a public library or like a much stronger masonry type stronger where that they're going to have an interior bathroom that has no exposed windows, like even that is going to give you a far greater likelihood of survival as compared to, say, a mobile home. There's other structures that you can go to, maybe even a local church, something along those lines, places with basements that are somewhere in your community that are probably going to have, open door policies. I believe there's a good resource for public shelters. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but maybe that can be included in the show notes. But that's a great resource, I would think, for, if you are weather aware and, we're in a tornado watch, like kind of have that in mind. And then, okay, maybe if, it looks like, weather could get bad here, maybe just plan around your day and kind of have that option available in order to give yourself the best chance possible if, you have the worst case scenario barreling down on you.
Yeah.
And that link is findyourtornadoshelter.com.
There it is. Yeah, we'll definitely add that in the show notes. That's a incredible resource. It's the entire country.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it's Craig Cece, if I'm not getting his name wrong. I apologize, but I believe he's behind that project, and he's like continually updating it and stuff like that. I see his posts on it a lot. So I figured, might as well share the resource while we're talking about the subject, because I mean, it's like with mobile homes, it's like there's only really so much you can do. And even a lot of the scary thing is there's a lot of the modern construction that we're seeing nowadays, builders cutting corners and stuff like that. A good example of that in recent memory was the Elkhorn tornado in Nebraska, where you had a new housing development basically just kind of get eviscerated. And I mean, that, like, yeah, for sure a violent tornado, but kind of looking at the damage photos after the fact and not seeing any sort of retention methods, or it was rather startling to see for such a new development in a known tornado prone area of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. My parents lived just south of there in Ashland, Nebraska. And so that tornado affected folks that they knew. And yeah, just a really, really, really devastating storm. You mentioned the fortified home project. I had no idea about this, but I just looked it up, and it's really, really fascinating to bring sort of like a new standard in building construction in terms of like storm resilience. That's a really, really fascinating resource as well.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I point to when I've gotten a number of emails and stuff like that after some of the damage analysis videos and people asking questions about that. And that's kind of the main resource that I point to. If you are building a home and you want to, kind of cross your T's and dot your I's, that's kind of those types of standards are the things that I would be looking towards.
Yeah. And that's fortifiedhome.org for anyone looking for more information about that. I would say too, in speaking about, storm damage and destruction of property and things like that, such an important part in understanding, what storms do and how they create the damage they do in the areas that they do, is just understanding and having like good raw data on storms and tornadoes and understanding their behavior. And you've done some like seriously legit work around, sensor deployment in creative ways and capturing information about storms. Will you tell us a little bit about like a couple of projects that you've worked on and actually presented at conferences?
Yeah. So this goes back a couple of years. When I was in college at Quinnipiac, JuneFirst was just kind of beginning to take shape. And I kind of had this kind of guiding kind of philosophy that I was starting to kind of work it around. And I was like, I want to do something where, we can do observations of supercell thunderstorms and kind of do my engineering type part to, maybe come up with new observation methods. So I ended up developing a couple of projects through the university where we basically created UAVs, so unmanned aerial vehicles, that would basically deploy our own dropsondes effectively. So little sensor packages that have little long-range radio transmitters, and they're recording a whole breadth of parameters in order to observe behaviors in supercell thunderstorms. That project was, ended up turning into like my capstone project for graduation, but it had been in the works for a number of years, and I was fortunate enough to kind of see it through development and take it through a number of testing phases. And unfortunately, after leaving university, I kind of lost my funding avenue from it. So it's something that I've been really wanting to really bolster back up again. And what's even cooler to see now is like Project Otis, that's been kind of making the rounds too with their UAV projects. And I think, kind of using UAVs to observe storm environments is going to be the next real, like, a verification method of observing storms, because there's only so much you can do with radar. Yes, more mobile Doppler radar is a really powerful tool, but at the same time too, it's like there's only so much you can see with it, and it would be great to really start to gather those types of parameters inside storms and try to find the trends that really separate, tornadic producer versus non-tornadic producer. I couple that with like some of the things that we're seeing with like Dr. Cameron Nixon's work with like photographs and stuff like that. Like there's some potential there to like, get some real, storm photographs, just environmentally that we can probably observe. There's just so much that I think could be done with UAVs to really further the field, because there's many opportunities in terms of really improving our observations.
Yeah.
So this is an open invite to throw money at you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, get back and, I know there's some really cool projects that are underway right now with a couple of universities, and I find myself as a confident engineer, and I'm willing to, put my neck out there to get the job done. So I'll put it that way. If there's any cool UAV research projects in the field of weather, I'm more than happy to, lend what I've done thus far to contribute to furthering the project and, really pushing the boundaries of what we can understand in both supercell thunderstorms and tornadoes.
And what would you say is something, if there was like, one or two things about supercells or tornadoes themselves that like is like a data point or a collection of data points that is kind of like a holy grail of information that we're looking for and that maybe we still don't understand?
I think a big thing, I think one of the more recent things that we've, kind of really started to uncover, and I think, I point back to Cameron Nixon and his work, are like the storm interactions and those types of things going on between storm and storm. So it seems like less of what's happening with isolated storms and more what's happening around the storm that's really kicking off tornado genesis. And I think that maybe if there's a way that we can observe the process itself, get the environmental, kind of circumstances around that type of interaction, and be able to, observe what's happening at a storm scale level, that we can really pick up on trends to really isolate, what type of environment would support, these types of mergers and nudgers and that type of, those storm interactions that seem to be playing a much bigger part in tornado genesis than what we really realized before this type of research.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And that really, the sheer number of variables that go into a storm and tornado genesis, it's mind-boggling. And I think most people don't recognize that. And it's something, I think, unfortunately, it plays into people's judgment of forecasters. And, why can't you just tell us when there's going to be a tornado? And it's like, well, I don't think it's a stretch to say millions of variables that can play into a tornado and how it forms. Yeah,
100%. And I think some of the supercomputer simulations that we've seen from like work of Dr. Lee Orff, where we're kind of seeing kind of these, those types of storm scale features that, that we're starting to really, pick up on in aiding in that process. And I think, that's another area where UAVs really could, kind of be that verification tool. If we can cross-reference what's happening in, those supercomputer simulations, and observe them in real-life scenarios, then that just gives us that verification needed to really be like, okay, maybe we do have a pretty good idea of what separates the supercell mechanisms that are responsible for the tornado genesis process.
Well, that's something that Twisters 2 got really right, I guess. So props to that team.
Absolutely.
Awesome. You've been awesome. This
yeah, I could pick your brain all day about this stuff.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's nice to be able to, talk about storms freely and not see the eye roll of my girlfriend when I start going too deep down a rabbit hole.
We know that eye roll well, for sure.
Oh my goodness, do we ever? That's the only reason we started the podcast, is to avoid the eye rolls.
That's right.
It's our shield.
Well, Ethan Moriarty, thank you so much for joining us on the StormReel podcast. Is there anything you'd like to direct our listeners to online to take a look at?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about it a lot today, but the YouTube channel is kind of the main thing that I pour most of my focus into right now, and that's at JuneFirst. The first is spelt out on YouTube. That's where the most of the happenings happen. And then I would say, I kind of, my more conversational side is on Twitter at eMoriartyWX. That's where I kind of will throw up, occasional thoughts and storm targets or what have you, musings, fun storm photography. Why not,
Absolutely. Yeah, Ethan is a wonderful follow, and subscribe to him on YouTube. You could just fall down that rabbit hole. His videos are a cut above, genuinely. They're so entertaining, so informative. It's a really, really, really great follow. So thanks again, Ethan, for joining us. And thank you for listening to the StormReel podcast. Please, if you could, rate, review, and subscribe. And if the place you're listening has like a little bell or notification icon, hit that too, so you know when the next episode of the StormReel releases. For StormReel, I've been Jeremy Hamann, joined by Gabe Cox. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk soon.
This episode was made in part by the generous support of our newest subscribers, Jordan and Cassandra, along with a donation from Walter and Adele. Thank you all for being a part of the StormReel family, and remember to keep looking up.